Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video where today we're here replaying another of the classic Formula 1 games, and today we have come to an absolute icon. This, I think many people would argue, still to this day was the most complete Formula 1 game that Codemasters have ever brought. Yes, we are on F1 2013. Yeah, like I said, this game was, for a lot of people, there's still a huge amount of people today that kind of classify this as the ultimate F1 game that Code is released, in this series. After this, we have 2014 and 2015, which were both terrible. So this game ended up being played by a lot of people for upwards of 3 years. And boy, oh boy, did it come stacked with some content as well. F1 Classics.
F1 2013. In this mode, you'll have the opportunity to race classic Formula 1 cars from different eras in a number of different game modes.
God, I miss Murray. Murray Walker was such an icon, and he was featured inside this game. Now, you had a variation of cars, I believe, as well, obviously, from this game mode. So you had, Grand Prix, time trial, time attack, and even a very cool scenario mode as well, which allowed you to compete in various kind of hypothetical scenarios included in that. Now, obviously as well, in terms of the cars you had, the Williams FW07B, the Lotus 98T, the Williams FW12, the Lotus 100T, and then even the Ferrari 88C as well there. So, these were all in F1 2013, and then got completely scrapped for F1 2014 as well. They just could not make them work with the new handling model, but F1 2013... immediately, that was really, really cool as well. Now, 2012 brought a lot of new and very exciting kind of, career mode updates as well, including the Young Driver Test and the Season Challenge. These were all ported over into the 2013 game as well, and they worked really, really well, just to kind of add that extra level of depth to career mode. Now, I am going to be doing a video as well in this series where we go back and play F1 2012, but then also next year, I absolutely want to go in and do some career modes as well on these classic games, because maybe more impressive than anything else is that this game supports my Fanatec wheel. Yes, I can actually play this one on modern hardware, which is quite impressive, because I wanted to do a video on F1 2016, and that game won't even load up. So the fact that F1 2013 can support hardware nearly 10 years newer than itself and just work, and some of the more modern F1 games don't, goes to show you, yeah, I think another reason why this game was so popular. We also had Proving Grounds, which gave you even more scenarios, which obviously, yeah, you could go through and unlock, as Crofty apparently is going to talk us through this one. And then, of course, yeah, you had Time Attack and Time Trial as well in this game. Now, obviously, you had all of the official 2013 cars and drivers as well. So, Sebastian Vettel, obviously, and Mark Webber down at Red Bull. Alonso and Felipe Massa at Ferrari. Jenson Button, and this year was Sergio Perez. Yeah, people forget Perez had one very ill-fated year at McLaren. Red Bull is not the first top team that Sergio has been with. Kimi Räikkönen and Romain Grosjean down at Lotus. It was Lewis Hamilton's first year with Mercedes alongside Nico Rosberg. Sauber, I believe, was Esteban Gutierrez and I think Adrian Sutil, but I could be wrong on that one. Force India, I believe, was Hulkenberg and Paul di Resta. Sutton and Hulkenberg might be the other way around. I'm really stretching my F1 knowledge here. Williams was Bottas and Maldonado. Toro Rosso, I believe this year was Jean-Eric Vergne and Daniel Ricciardo. Caterham was two people. One of them might have been Kamui Kobayashi. I genuinely, yeah, this is really starting to play on my brain. And then Marussia, I believe, was Max Chilton. And, of course, Jules Bianchi there. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to head out in Sebastian Vettel's iconic Red Bull RB9, the last of the V8 champion cars. And I tell you what, 2013 had an absolutely stacked calendar as well of real Grand Prix. Albert Park, then obviously Sepang, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, whatever you want to call it, a brilliant circuit. Shanghai, then Bahrain, the old version of Catalonia before we went to Monaco. Montreal, Silverstone, them, even the Nürburgring was on this game. The last time, obviously, except for 2020, where the Nürburgring was featured on the F1 calendar. Hungary, Belgium, and Monza, as obviously we know and love today. Even Singapore as well. I believe this was the last iteration with the Singapore sling before Korea. This place was a really, really cool F1 track. Suzuka, India, before Abu Dhabi, Austin, and the season finale out in Sao Paulo. I think for this one today, we're going to head to the Indian Grand Prix. We're going to do a few laps around here, just to talk about, I think, what made F1 2013 so great. But let's not forget as well, I've got to try and remember what option I've got to press to try and go over to it. I've kind of got my controller, my wheel, and my keyboard set up for this. You also had Jerez and Brands Hatch, and I believe with the 90s pack you got 2 extra circuits as well, which were Estoril and... So after a quick Google, it was Estoril and, of course, the iconic Imola circuit as well. So yeah, Imola was on F1 2013 long before it ever made its return to the F1 grid. But yeah, like I said, first of all then, we'll go to India. Obviously, this was where Sebastian Vettel as well was able to crown himself as a 4-time back-to-back F1 World Champion. It's all those cool little things as well, you know, the little panoramic shots of the circuit and then getting into the car. It made this game feel more immersive. It made you feel almost like you were there as well at the venue. But yeah, we're going to head straight out then onto the circuit. Not going to worry about setups or anything like that. And yeah, we're just going to do some laps on this game. Now, I've obviously got everything set up, like I said, with my wheel. Of course, this is an older Formula 1 game. The steering isn't perfect. It's actually very good. Better than I thought it would be. But yeah, it can be a little bit clunky. You can just lose a tiny bit of definition in kind of what's going on. But genuinely holds up very, very well. Now, I'm playing this as well at 4K with completely maxed out graphics. Which obviously, yeah, hardware has understandably moved a long way since 2013 as well. But I tell you what, this game does not hold up badly. You know, I would... Like I said, I want to do a series on this game at some point in the future as well. It holds up incredibly well, and of course, you've got to love those old V8s as well. You know, these things, you know, I strongly do argue that between 2006 and 2010, the start of the V8 era was genuinely, like, people look back at the V10s and things like that. That era was such a golden age for Formula 1 cars, and even now... You know, sort of 2010 to 2013, I'll look back very, very fondly as well. Yeah, these years were a little bit more dominated by Red Bull, especially in 2011 and 2013 with Sebastian Vettel. You know, when he was confident in a car, he was just absolutely insane. But there were a lot of great races in this era, and like I said, you know, the historical importance of this race as well in 2013. Sebastian Vettel marking himself as a 4-time Formula 1 World Champion. And then, of course, that iconic shot of him just sat in front of his car as well. You know, obviously, India was only on the calendar for 3 years. Of course, you get about every, you know, couple of years or so speculation that it could return to the F1 grid as well. And, yeah, he was on the calendar for 3 years, and Sebastian Vettel dominated all 3 iterations of the Indian Grand Prix. No one else even really got a look in the GPs there. As I mean, this handling model, it's a lot easier than most modern F1 games. You know, traction is very, very easy to come by as well, but it still feels fun, it still feels rewarding, and I think it just goes to show, you know, people say, oh, F1 24, it's boring because it's too easy. This game goes to show that, you know, you can still have a fun handling model, even though it is quite forgiving as well there. And obviously through this section of corners, I mean, you got to turn in a little bit earlier than clearly I keep doing. I forget how much that corner kind of folded in on itself. But yeah, these cars were, you know, downforce monsters as well. Especially, obviously, the RB6 from 2010. That thing had so much grip in it. But yeah, in terms, obviously, of the game, though, why F1 2013, I think, was so popular? Well, it felt like, obviously, 2010 kind of game out, and it was a very good baseline for the F1 games. 2011 was a little bit ropey. They took a bit of a different direction with the handling model. It didn't quite pay off. 2012 was fantastic. And, you know, a bit like what we saw with, you know, 2020 and 2021. 2012 was fantastic. They brought a load of new features to the game. 2013, they didn't try to do anything to... They kind of kept the winning formula and just improved on it. You know, they added the classic content, which I loved. You know, they added some classic tracks as well. But it just did a really, really good job of representing, you know, where the sport was at that time. Now, obviously... You know, a lot of people have said, you know, F122 and stuff wasn't very popular because, obviously, you know, Red Bull dominated. Red Bull dominated this year. This game still is absolutely loved by fans. Now, admittedly, that was more only the second half of the 2012 season, but... sorry, 2013 season, even. But, yeah, this game is still, like I said, absolutely loved. And I think, honestly, is one of the only games that can kind of rival 2020 and F1 2021 as being the ultimate Cody's F1 games as well. You know, if they brought out a remaster for this game or something, which I know is impossible due to licensing and things like that, I think people would buy it in droves. And I mean, this game now as well, you can't even buy anymore. I think, you know, it kind of almost, for a lot of people now, holds mythical status. Because, yeah, on PC... it's unavailable to buy new. Now, obviously, you can buy console versions of the game fairly accessibly still, but even then, I mean, this game, I think, now goes... You know, you can find it on eBay for, like, £20, £30. Now, I was actually quite lucky. I found a PC copy online a few years ago that obviously was a disc copy of the game, and luckily, whoever owned it before me clearly didn't use Steam, because they'd never authenticated it, so I've actually managed to get this game... to work on Steam. Now, you might be able to get some luck with that as well. But otherwise, yeah, you're going to have to buy a disc copy if you want to experience F1 2013. But like I said, if they could bring this game back, I genuinely think it would sell more copies than F1 24. That's just the state of where the F1 games are right now, that I reckon a 10-year-old game, or even older than that now, could sell better than a Formula 1 title, a modern Formula 1 title. But I mean, yeah, the handling model is really, really good fun as well. It worked fantastically on both, you know, on this wheel, on older wheels, and even on a game controller as well. I must admit, I am so happy I'm able to set this up with my wheel. You can see it's, you know, it's not perfect. I feel like I'm having to steer in a little bit more in some places. Sometimes the car kind of does what I want. Other times it struggles a bit. But, you know, that's part of the fun of these classic F1 games. And I think the other big thing to remember with some of these older F1 cars as well was these things were brilliant fun to kind of chuck around. Modern F1 cars, you got to be so much more careful with them. This was really the last generation of car that you could kind of throw into a corner and hope that it would stick as we make our way through that final turn. And it's going to be a 1 minute 28.4. I've got no idea whether that's competitive or not. Lap records on this game were absolutely insane. And it's other little things as well that, you know, made such a difference. There was a huge amount of modding support for F1 2013 as well. You know, you could do custom seasons and things and mod a load of extra classic cars in. League racing, you know, was super popular as well back in the day. You know, the online system, yeah, there was still some bugs. I remember on this game, for example, the Lotus was rapid on equal cars, as in 10 miles an hour quicker than everything else in a straight line. But every other car was pretty much perfectly equal with each other. And things like that as well. It was just... This was kind of where, like, the old engine peaked for the F1 games. And, you know, like I said, F1 2020, F1 2021 come close. But it really does feel like this was ahead of its time by a long, long way. Let's do a Grand Prix, though. I think we'll head back to one of the other classic circuits. I think we'll take Lewis Hamilton's first Mercedes to the Nürburgring.
Complete. Ready.
Well, here we are then, lining up P5 on the grid, ready for the German Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton's first as a Mercedes Formula 1 driver. It's 5 red lights, and it is going to be lights out, and away we go there. And so many iconic names inside this game. We haven't got off to the best start, though. A little bit caught up behind our teammate Nico Rosberg down in towards turn 1. And Mark Webber, Felipe Massa there. Oh, we'll try and have a look down the inside. Looks like someone has instantly taken out the bollard through that first corner. Sebastian Vettel, who started from pole there, has had issues and will immediately try and go around the outside of one of the Germans. We'll end up in a German sandwich as down the inside of Nico Rosberg, while our teammate will go at the very next corner. Alonso looks like he's made it through those first couple of corners and has streaked into an early lead there. Felipe Massa just in front of me. And yeah, Raikkonen as well made a really good start up into P2 then of this race. Now, obviously, we didn't have kind of like the ERS modes like you used to now. Back in 2013, they were still running KERS, which was, you know, a similar system to what we have now with ERS. But you only got 7 seconds of it a lap. And yeah, it would last for, yeah, like 6-7 seconds a lap. It would give you about an extra 60 brake horsepower as well. So yeah, it was really, really strategic, and obviously you could use it anywhere around the lap as well there. So as we make our way out onto the back straight, you know, if you were stuck behind the guy in front, you try and drain your battery there as well. Massa tries to cover me off as we make our way up towards the end of the straight. Tuck our way in through the chicane there as Raikkonen clearly wants to park the bus on the pair of us here. If I'm not mistaken as well, I believe Kimi Raikkonen should have won this race in 2013, but Lotus completely butchered the strategy in the end, and I can't remember who it was that took the dub in the end, but yeah, it certainly was not Kimi. Of course, Hamilton, his first season with Mercedes, it wasn't fantastic. He did get 1 win on the board at the Hungaroring, which I believe was the race immediately after this one. But yeah, Mercedes this year just could not make their tyres last. As in, if a race for most teams would be like a 1 or a 2 stop, Mercedes would have to 3 stop it. It was kind of the first signs, though, that they were going to become a powerhouse, because it was the first year, you know, they got a lot of poles throughout 2013, you know, and showcased that they could build a car that had the pace to win races. Of course, after Rosberg won the 2012 Chinese Grand Prix as well for the team. And of course, yeah, this was the first year after Michael Schumacher had obviously retired from the sport as well. So, well, for the second time, Schumi had retired from the sport. But I tell you what, Fernando Alonso even has absolutely bolted free at the front of the order. Of course, narrowly missed out on the 2012 World Championship. Ferrari's 2013 car wasn't as great. I believe he did get 1 win at Silverstone, I want to say. Again, I'm really trying to stretch my F1 knowledge here of over 10 years ago. But yeah, this circuit, though, I admit, this is another track as well that needs to, I think, come back as like a classic track in the F1 games. You know, if we had some modern classic F1 tracks returning to the series, this place, Sepang, and, you know, India, Korea as well. I want to definitely, behind the scenes, I'm going to go do some laps around the Korean circuit as well. There's, you just see, struggling with the back end just a little bit through those first couple of corners. I think I've set the AI to advanced, which was like the 2nd highest level. I couldn't really remember how competitive they were inside this game. But yeah, at the moment, though, we seem to have a little bit of extra pace, though. But that being said, Alonso and I just bolted free of the rest of the order here. And I mean, even the engineer, yeah, obviously the first ever iteration of the engineer, basically, well, no, we had Chris before this, didn't we, in like 2010, I believe. Yeah, then obviously for 2011 right the way through to 2014 we had this engineer as well, who was fairly insightful. You know, he didn't quite live up to the hype that Chris always attempted to, but still, yeah, very, very cool. And obviously, you know, it's all those features that even today, you know, this engineer works really well. Sometimes even Mark still will tell you, you know, you should be on wet tyres now, and it's a completely dry track and things like that. There's the team already starting to worry about the tyres. But we got the DRS, though, on Alonso, who's not going to go defensive enough. Down the inside at the chicane. Oh, chuck the back end in. Whoa, hey. Just trying to find the grip off the corner as well. There is Alonso Again, we'll try and get back around our outside on the exit of the turn. But into the lead then we'll go of the German Grand Prix. I mean, it's even that. You get to know what the other teams are doing. Now, I don't believe there was, there's never been a huge variety with strategy in the F1 games either. But I believe, this was one of the better years for the AI kind of doing different bits and pieces with it. And, something that still lacks in F1 24 today is, of course, the fact that a lot of races follow a fairly similar process. Unless you go for the alternate strategy, most of the AI kind of go crazy on the first few laps, and then everyone kind of settles in. And then really the only battle you've got then, because of the DRS strings, is just the battle for the lead. But yeah, on F1 2013, it really did feel like the pace would move around a bit, Alonso's built up a 6-second lead over any of the other AI in this one after just 3 laps. So, some of the AI would go out all guns blazing and then potentially struggle towards the end of a stint. Others obviously would try and be a bit more careful. That Lotus was incredibly good on its tyres, which allowed Raikkonen, I believe, to win the first race of the 2013 season at Albert Park as well there. And that Lotus probably should have been second by the end of the year, but just lacked a little bit of reliability and a few other bits and pieces as well. But ultimately, this game I think is loved for one reason and one reason only, more than any other. And, it sounds so simple, but can be so difficult to really get right. Apparently, just like that chicane. It's just fun. It's fun to drive. And that, I think, for a lot of people, is why this game still now lives, so highly in people's views of the F1 franchise. Even making little mistakes like that. I know next time round I want to try and get that chicane nailed now. You can lock up the fronts a little bit there like we have been, but it doesn't completely ruin your tyres for the next 15 laps. And yeah, people go on about, like, the immersion of the modern Formula 1 games. And I think, for Codys still, they've kind of found themselves in this weird little middle ground where the games are neither immersive enough to be enjoyable in that regard, but almost kind of not casual enough to kind of be fun for just random people getting involved as well. It really is an odd little spot they're in, and, to capture the magic of F1 2013 would not be an easy feat for them. But it really did feel like, yeah, towards the end of the V8 era, they did absolutely nail these games as well. But, yeah, I mean, this thing is just so much fun. You load up the front end through the Schumacher S, and it just feels so rewarding to drive. All the cars look really good. They handle really nicely as well there. And like I said, the career mode has so much detail to it. The young driver test, everything like that. Scenario mode. Well, like I said, if I want to do a full gameplay series on this title at some point next year. And, I'd love to try and do a couple of seasons, try and win the World Championship. But then I'd also love to go in and try and complete the scenario mode and things like that as well. It was just so cool and different. And, a lot of those features were still missing today. As you can see, yeah, tyre temperature, like Mercedes tended to. In this era, they absolutely shred the tyres as well there as somehow new fastest lap. I mean, yeah, you even had obviously the different mix modes as well with the cars, which obviously added just that little bit more strategy to races where you had, you could have a little bit of extra ERS, and you can see where the option, it was such a simple but effective MFD as well, where you could, change the brake bias, change obviously the revs and obviously the tyres as well. Just 4 sets of tyres. We didn't have all this super soft C3, C4 tyre. Everything just worked as you would expect there. And weirdly, I always found this confusing. But the option tyre, I believe... No, sorry, it was the prime tyre was the one that went further, which never really made much sense to me. It always confused me. Both tyres kind of sounded like the soft. Maybe that bit I don't miss so much from 2013 as well, but I mean, it's a very overcast day here at the Nürburgring, and even the lighting still looks very, very good. We'll dive into the pit lane. We'll deal with that quickly, because I believe, if I remember correctly as well, the pit stop animations were very, very cool inside this game. The HUD's just nice and simple, but looks really good. You get all the information you can possibly need, and you don't feel completely overwhelmed with battery numbers and things like that. Ultimately, the cars were simpler, and that kind of made things a little bit easier. Now, you didn't have manual control on your way into the pit lane, I believe. But I think you did have to steer the car in, or you could do. As then, obviously, yeah, you get this wonderful little view of the team doing it. 3.1 second stop there. That'd be terrible by modern Formula 1 day standards as well. But we are going to re-emerge at the front of the video. And again, obviously, you have to be careful on pit lane exit before it would give you control once again. No more pit stops to go, though, to the end of this Grand Prix. So I think we are going to absolutely dominate this one. Yeah, so we can obviously tweak the brake bias and things like that. And obviously the cold tyres, as you tried to make your way out of the pit lane as well, were really, really good fun. You know, it was just a dynamic game. Everything kind of made sense. And yeah, it was just a really, really enjoyable experience. But, you know, I don't think, you know, doing a video like this can really capture the entire magic that was F1 2013. You know, for a lot of people, this game was special for a lot of separate reasons as well there. And, you know, I'd love to hear kind of your stories from F1 2013 down in the comments below. Was this your first F1 game? Do you have fond memories of it? I think what we're going to do, though, is something that I think a lot of people are going to remember from this game to finish us off, because there was another reason why I picked the Nürburgring for today's video. And hopefully if I nail this, you could do one of the coolest jumps of the F1 series there. Aim for the jump, and there you go. Brilliant fun. It allowed you to do those fun little weird things as well. I remember there was a glitch, I think it was at Imola, where you could actually escape the circuit and go outside, you know, and explore kind of the Imola, you know, the town of Imola as well there. But there we go. F1 2013, a very, very special title for a lot of reasons. This game, absolutely fantastic. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know whether you think F1 2013 was the ultimate F1 game as well. Get yourself subscribed to Matt212 Gameplay for when I do end up doing a series on this game as well in the future. But yeah, that's going to do us for this one, guys. And we'll be back very soon with more Formula 1 content.